Guys should have listened to the prompt, which should get you thinking. We're going to be talking about the Euphrates River. Obviously, we're going to be talking about an uncontrolled water supply. And it said if you live in one of these villages on the plains next to the Euphrates River, and we're going to learn that the Euphrates River is actually the longest river in southwestern Asia, you need to provide your village with year-round water, a year-round supply of water, and that they asked you to design a water control system. Now, I'm not going to require a drawn and labeled system to how you think you should manage water, but you should think about what would be if you had no other way and you didn't know anything about water control, which these people didn't. This is all brand new. How would you set up a water supply to be able to control the water so that way your crops, your people, everything you need, your cattle, they have water year round? Because if you remember from the last section, the Tigris and Euphrates flood how many times a year? Just once. So you have an overabundance of water just one time a year. What do you do the rest of the year? So we're going to read section 4.4 titled Uncontrolled Water Supply, which was a problem going back to section 1 when it talked about all the problems that the Sumerians faced. Uncontrolled water supply was one. So I'm going to start reading. The farmers who moved to Sumer faced many challenges. I'm going to get out my highlighter here and get ready. Not highlighting yet. One of the biggest problems was the uncontrolled water supply. So during the spring, rain and melted snow from those Zagros mountains flowed into the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, causing them to flood across the plains, which again was good. We're actually going to highlight this. So the snow melted and rain brought down water to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, causing them to flood across the plains. But no one could be sure exactly when the floods would come. They had no idea when those floods would come. If it happened after farmers planted their crops, their young plants would be washed away. For much of the rest of the year, the sun-baked soil was dry and hard as stone. Hot, strong winds blew thick layers of dust across the ground. So these are all the problems that they had to deal with. For the rest of the year, the sun-baked soil was dry and hard as stone. More so, they had hot, strong winds blowing dust everywhere. Not good for farming. So faced with such dramatic seasonal changes, back to the reading, farmers had to constantly struggle to raise their crops. Either they had too little water or they had way too much. That's a problem that they had. So farmers had too little water or they had too much. I'm going to highlight all that. Or they had way too much. So they needed to find a way to control the water so they could have a reliable water supply all year round. So Sumerian farmers began to create irrigation systems to provide water for their fields. And if you remember back from 2 sections ago, what an irrigation system is, because it was defined, but an irrigation system is just a way of supplying land with water. How to get the water to your crops, to the land. And they built earth walls called levees. So this isn't going to be an actual vocab word, but it's always important. It's always good to highlight definitions. So these levees, they built earth walls called levees along the sides of the rivers to prevent the flooding. It kind of blocked the water from coming in. The water flowed through the holes. They put I skipped the line, I'm sorry. When the land was dry, they poked holes in the levees, and then the water flowed through the holes into the thirsty fields. So they built these levees here. We're going to highlight that just to point it out. And these were earth walls which prevented flooding. Moving on. Over time, the Sumerians learned other ways to control the supply of water. They dug canals to shape the paths the water took. They also constructed dams along the river to block the water and force it to collect in pools they have built. And the water was stored in these pools called reservoirs. So the 3 things that they did to help control the water is they built canals, dams, and reservoirs. Canals helped control the water, dams block the water, and reservoirs save the water. So moving on into our notes, let's talk about the problems that they had, because you want to do the problems first. And we have another flow chart, all of these problems and the solutions. So, first problem, describe the seasonal weather changes in Sumer. We highlighted that. All the different weather changes that they had, just describe them. Just list them out. That's what's said in the text. Number 2 says, why was it difficult to raise crops in Sumer? Well, some of the weather and some of the other issues that they had made it difficult to raise crops. What were they? What were those problems that stopped them from raising crops? And then lastly, you need to draw and label a simple picture showing the problem caused by an uncontrolled water supply. So what problem arose, aka flooding, because of an uncontrolled water supply? They also had issues getting water year round. So now we get into the solutions. How did the Sumerians solve the problem of an uncontrolled water supply? What did they do to help solve the problem? And then you're just going to draw and label a simple picture showing a Sumerian irrigation system. And I'm going to show you a picture in the next video of what yours is kind of going to look like, but it should include a reservoir, dam, canals, things like that. And you can draw it just based off of the descriptions listed in the text. So lastly, in what other ways did the Sumerians control the water supply? Again, highlighted in the text, just list out the different ways that they helped control the water. All right, and once you do that, you are ready to move on to the next section after you get approval. And good job. If you need any help, let me know.